Carlos! 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 This was all I said and shouted as I woke up in a very unfamiliar room. The bed beneath me was too soft, the sheets too smooth for me to consider myself hostage to any dangerous situation. My head throbbed, and a dull pain pulsed through my body, but I hardly cared. I tried to call out, but my voice was weak and strained. Carlos! Carlos! I shouted, hoping he'd hear me. Hearing me shout, someone came, but it wasn't who I was hoping it would be. An old woman shuffled into the room and looked at me with concern. "Everything is alright, dear," she said in a gentle voice, though her words did little to calm my rising anxiety. "You should take it easy. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. 18 hours? The reality of her words hit me like a cold splash of water. I had been out for almost a day. My mind raced as I struggled to piece together the fragments of what had happened. The last thing I remembered was chaos, but nothing made sense anymore. "I need to find Carlos," I mumbled, my voice crackling with urgency. "Where is he? I need to see him." The old woman's eyes softened. "He's here. Just take a deep breath and—" Before she could finish, I pushed myself out of bed. Too quickly. My legs felt like jelly, and my body swayed uncontrollably. The room spun around me, and I stumbled, barely catching myself on the edge of the bed. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. But then, just as I was about to fall, a strong arm wrapped around me, steadying me. I looked up and saw Carlos, his face etched with worry. He looked different, more worn out than I remembered, but it was definitely him. "Easy there," Carlos said, his voice a soothing balm to my frantic nerves. "You're not ready to be up yet." I tried to pull away, but Carlos held me firm. "Where are we?" I demanded. "What's going on?" Carlos sighed and helped me back to the bed. "We're in one of my safe houses," he said, his voice low and serious. "Safe house? Who are you really?" I said the last part in nothing more than a mumble, but loud enough to pierce the silence between us. "I'm a thief. An international jewel thief, actually. I smuggle precious stones across borders." His confession hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind struggled to process his words. "You're a... what?" I stammered. Carlos looked down. "I wanted to tell you the truth before everything went downhill, but I couldn't. I thought I could protect you from my world." "Protect me?" I shot back, feeling a surge of anger. "You kept me in the dark about who you really are. And now? Now I find myself in a strange place, not knowing what's going on." "I'm sorry," Carlos said earnestly. "I never had anyone I wanted to change for, but I do for you. If you give me one chance, I'll try to change my ways for the better. I swear it." I couldn't deal with it right away. I could feel my anger fading away, but that was the last thing I wanted to happen. So I just got up and moved towards the door to leave. But I was stopped in my tracks as soon as I reached the door. Where was I? Where was I supposed to go from here? Who and what am I when I'm not his anymore? I found him when I had nothing and no one by my side. He made me the person I am today. So I know if it takes every effing ounce of courage in me to accept him for who he is, I'd do it any day in a blink. I turned around and looked at the face that had been the reason behind all my smiles these past couple of months, but also my biggest betrayal. I hated myself for how easily I found it in me to forgive him. I had somewhat forgiven him before he even apologized, and that alone was enough evidence that I was screwed. But he didn't need to know that, at least not now. "You have one chance," my finger pointing straight at him. "One chance, Carlos, only because I don't have anywhere else to go right now anyway. But if you mess this up..." But before I could complete the sentence, his body crashed into mine as his arms entwined me all over. "I understand," Carlos said, nodding solemnly. "I won't let you down. If only this little fool knew that that chance had been genuine all along." He helped me settle back into bed, and I laid there, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts swirled with questions and doubts. What did his world mean for us? Could he really change? And what about the life we had imagined together? 3 days later, the house was too beautiful to be a hiding place. There were mountains, a water stream, green lush forests around. I could barely take all the beauty in. "Ready to catch the big one?" Carlos asked, handing me a fishing rod with a grin. I chuckled, feeling a bit of the tension from the past few days easing away. We'll see. I haven't done this in years. We settled into a comfortable silence, the only sounds being the gentle lapping of water against the dock and the distant calls of birds. Carlos's presence beside me was reassuring. It was like the old days when things were simpler and we'd spend hours just enjoying each other's company. After a while, I felt a tug on my line. My heart raced with excitement. I think I've got something. Carlos moved closer to help. Reel it in slowly, he advised, his voice low and steady. Slowly, I managed to pull in a decent-sized fish. I held it up with a proud smile. Look at that! Not bad for my first try. Carlos's eyes sparkled with approval. Not bad at all. You're a natural. We spent the rest of the morning fishing and talking, our laughter mingling with the sounds of nature. It was a simple pleasure, but it was these small moments that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, things could get back to normal. 2 days later. Come on in, Carlos called out as he yanked off his t-shirt and walked in the water. I hesitated for a moment, then followed suit, stepping into the cool, refreshing water. The sensation was out of the world. We swam around, the water sparkling in the sunlight. We played like we were kids again, splashing each other and laughing freely. At one point, Carlos pulled me close and we stood beneath the waterfall together. The water pounded down on us, creating a curtain of mist. The waterfall was too pretty, and even prettier was the man I was standing with. His sharp features and broad shoulders, intimidating demeanor, all was very much in contrast to how safe I felt with him. This is incredible, I shouted over the roar of the falls. Carlos grinned and leaned in to kiss me, the water adding an extra layer of magic to the moment. I'm glad you like it. We stayed there for a while, enjoying the natural beauty in each other's company. The waterfall became our private sanctuary, a place where we could forget about everything else and just be together. Later that night, as evening fell, Carlos set up a bonfire in the backyard of the house. The sky was a deep indigo, dotted with stars. The crackling fire was a comforting contrast to the cool night air. We sat on a blanket beside the fire, roasting marshmallows and making s'mores. The flickering flames cast a warm glow in our faces, and the crackle of the fire created a cozy ambience. Carlos poked the fire with a stick, sending a few sparks into the air. This brings back memories, he said. His voice soft and took my hand, and we sat there in comfortable silence, simply enjoying the night. The fire's warmth was a reminder of how things could be so good, even after everything we'd been through. As the fire burned down to glowing embers, Carlos pulled me close. I know things haven't been perfect, he said quietly, but I'm really happy we have moments like this. Me too, I said, leaning into him. Can I ask you something? I said, suddenly lifting my head from his shoulders. He slightly nodded towards me to continue. I began hesitantly. Do you ever think about the future and what's next for us? He looked at me, his expression serious. I think about it all the time, he said, kissing the back of my hand. I may not know exactly what the future holds, but I know I don't want one if you're not in it. I felt a lump in my throat at his words. You really mean that? Carlos nodded, his gaze steady and sincere. Absolutely. You're everything to me. No matter what happens, I want to be with you. I want us to have a future together. His words filled me with a mix of relief and hope. I've been worried about what's ahead, but hearing you say that, it makes me feel like we can get through anything. Carlos touched my cheek, his touch warm and reassuring. We will, he said. We'll face whatever comes our way, together. A month later. I want to talk to you, now. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out sharp. Carlos's expression shifted from confusion to concern. What's going on? I didn't hold back. It's been over a month since we are stuck here, and to top that, you keep going away. God knows where at odd hours. What's going on? It's nothing, my darling. Just work. Trust me, he said, trying to touch my cheek, but I shifted. What about the guy you keep sneaking off to see, Carlos? Are you cheating on me? The question hung in the air, and Carlos's face flushed with anger. Cheating on you? Are you serious? How could you even think that? I stood up, my emotions boiling over. I don't know what to think. I've seen you with him, whispering, talking in hushed voices, and to top it all, you've been secretive and acting weird. It's like there's something you're not telling me. Carlos's anger flared. I'm trying everything I can to keep us safe and get us out of this mess. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? I'm working with people who can help us, but you'd rather accuse me of cheating? His outburst took me by surprise, and I took a step back, my own anger giving way to hurt. I'm not blaming you for the danger we're in. I'm blaming you for keeping me in the dark and making me feel like I can't trust you. Carlos's anger seemed to drain away as he saw the pain in my eyes. He took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair, looking worn out. James, I'm sorry. I never meant to make you feel this way. It's just that I've been collecting information. I'm trying to figure out how we can finally get out of hiding. I felt a pang of guilt at the way I had accused him. So you're saying you're not cheating on me? You're just working on our escape? Carlos nodded, his shoulders sagging. Yes, I'm trying to make sure we have everything in place so that when we do leave, it's safe and we don't end up in even more danger. I understand why you're upset, but I need you to trust me. I took a deep breath, my anger fading as I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions. I just felt so left out and scared. Carlos came over and took my hand, his touch gentle. I understand. I should have been more open with you. I'm sorry. 3 weeks later. It had been over 3 weeks since Carlos had vanished again. Each day felt like an eternity, and every minute was filled with worry and frustration. I kept myself busy with little tasks around the house, but my mind was always on edge, wondering where Carlos was and why he hadn't left any word. When Carlos finally walked through the door one evening, looking tired and disheveled, I felt a rush of mixed emotions. Relief was quickly overshadowed by a wave of anger and hurt. Where the hell have you been, Carlos? I shouted, my voice trembling with frustration. You disappear for over 3 weeks and don't leave a note or send a message. I've been left here alone, in the middle of nowhere, with no idea if you're coming back or not. Carlos looked taken aback by my outburst. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him a chance. Do you have any idea how terrifying it is to be here, waiting and wondering? I thought something had happened to you. I've been going out of my mind. Carlos took a deep breath and walked towards me, his face etched with weariness. James, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you like this. I've been working non-stop to figure out how we can finally get out of this situation. His apology didn't ease the storm inside me. That's the problem, Carlos. You keep saying we're close, but you never tell me what's going on. I'm left in the dark and you're out there doing whatever it is you're doing. Carlos rubbed his forehead, clearly exhausted. I understand why you're upset, but I was working on something I couldn't discuss until it was finalized. It was important for our safety. Safety? I snapped. What about my sanity? I need to know what's happening, not just be left here with no clue. Carlos looked at me with a mix of frustration and regret. I know it's been hard, but what I'm doing is hard too. The truth is, I've been negotiating with people who could help us escape. It's been a complicated process, and I couldn't risk any details leaking out. I threw my hands up in exasperation. So, you're telling me that you couldn't even drop me a message or a note? Just something to let me know you're okay and that there's a plan? Carlos sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping. I thought it was safer this way. I crossed my arms, still feeling the sting of abandonment. Well, it didn't work out very well, did it? Carlos stepped closer, his gaze softening. James, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to come back to you with good news. And? And what? Have you come with good news? Carlos nodded, a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. Yes, we're very close. I've secured a safe route and made all the necessary arrangements. We should be able to leave soon, but I needed to finalize everything before I could tell you. I felt a mix of relief and lingering anger. I hope so, Carlos, because I can't keep going like this. I need to know that there's an end in sight. Carlos's eyes were filled with sincerity as he looked at me. I understand. I promise you. I'm doing everything I can to make sure we can finally leave this behind and start a new life together. I just need a little more time to wrap everything up. I nodded, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease slightly as Carlos pulled me into a hug, holding me close. So, how are you going to make up for it? I asked. Huh? The emotional distress you have caused me over the month. How are you planning on making up for it? Carlos's eyes lit up with understanding. I get it. What do you want to do? I can arrange something here, or we could go out to a nice restaurant. I shook my head, feeling a surge of frustration. I'm tired of being cooped up here all the time. I want to do something different. How about going to a concert? It's been forever since we did something fun like that. Carlos looked a bit taken aback, but then nodded slowly. A concert, huh? I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, please, please. Just for a couple of hours. Not for long, please. I pleaded with him with puppy eyes. I know always works. I suppose a few hours out of the house might be good for us. Let me see what I can arrange. He agrees, accepting defeat. The next night, the place was packed with people and the energy was electric. I could hardly contain my excitement. Carlos and I found our spots, and as the lights dimmed, the crowd erupted into cheers. The band took the stage and the music filled the air. We sang along to every song, our voices blending with the crowds. It felt amazing to let loose and enjoy ourselves like we used to. Carlos kept glancing at me with a huge smile on his face. During one of the slower songs, he pulled me close and we danced together. The closeness was comforting, and I felt a sense of happiness I hadn't experienced in a long time. As the night went on, we shared kisses and whispered to each other in between songs. It was like a weight had been lifted, and we were simply enjoying being together without the constant worry of our situation. I'm really glad we did this, I said, leaning into Carlos as we walked back from the venue. It's been so nice to just forget about everything for a while. Carlos smiled, his eyes twinkling in the city lights. I'm glad too. It was nice to see you happy. We needed this. But as we turned into a quieter street a few blocks from where the concert had taken place, the atmosphere changed abruptly. We noticed a group of armed police officers standing in our path, their uniforms reflecting the streetlights. My heart skipped a beat and I could feel the excitement of the night slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of dread. Carlos, what's going on? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Carlos's face turned pale as he spotted the police. He didn't answer me. Instead, he grabbed my hand tightly and whispered urgently, "We need to run, now." Before I could react, Carlos was already pulling me towards an alleyway. My mind went blank as I followed him, panic rising. We dashed down the narrow path, but the reality of our situation hit me hard. I felt like I was moving in slow motion, my heart racing with fear and confusion. We reached the end of the alley, but as Carlos turned to look behind us, there was a loud, sharp sound. I flinched and saw Carlos stumble, clutching his left leg. It was all chaos, and I felt a wave of cold fear wash over me as my legs gave way too, and I sank to the ground beside Carlos. The police officers appeared at the entrance of the alley, their guns drawn. One of them shouted, "Stay where you are! Don't move!" Carlos struggled to get up, but his injured leg wouldn't cooperate. The officers rushed over and quickly subdued him. I sat on the ground, paralyzed by the sight. I could hardly believe what was happening. The police checked Carlos, and one of them found something in his innermost pocket. I couldn't see clearly from where I was, but I saw the officer's eyes widen as he pulled out a glimmering diamond. My heart sank as I recognized it. It was the Cullinan I, the great Star of Africa diamond. The reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Carlos hadn't changed. He was still involved in his old work. All the promises he had made to change his ways, to start fresh, were empty. The very thing we had been trying to escape from had caught up with us. The officers handcuffed Carlos, his face contorted in pain and disbelief. They started to lead him away, and I watched in stunned silence. Carlos's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and there was a look of regret and sorrow. I felt a pang of sadness and anger all at once. The police officers took Carlos to the hospital, and I was left alone, sitting on the cold pavement, hidden in the darkness. A few officers came over to question me, but their words barely registered. I was too lost in my own thoughts to really process what they were saying. They asked about Carlos, about the diamond, but all I could do was shake my head and give them the bare minimum. Eventually, the officers left, and I was sitting there, the weight of the truth and my reality crashing down on me. 3 days later. The past couple of days have gone in a blur. I went back to our secret house as I didn't know where else to go. However, the place constantly reminded me of all the good times we had and all the promises he had broken. The news about Carlos's arrest was everywhere. I couldn't escape the reminders of what had happened. Each headline and every report felt like a punch to the gut. Of course, I hadn't heard him until the third day, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me answer. I hesitated for a moment before pressing the receiver to my ear. "Hello?" I said, my voice trembling. "James?" Carlos's voice was a mix of relief and sadness. "It's me." I felt a surge of emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, all of it hit me at once. I don't want to hear anything from you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't want you to contact me again. There was a brief pause on the other end. I could almost hear Carlos gathering his thoughts. James, please. This is the only call I'm allowed. I need you to hear me out. Please don't hang up. I didn't reply, and he took my silence as an agreement. Carlos's voice softened. I'm sorry, James. I know I don't even deserve to ask for forgiveness, but I need you to know something. I truly wanted to change for you. It was just one final project before I moved, far away from all of this, with you, and lived the simplest, happy life we talked about. I meant it, and when I said I wanted to change for you. I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Carlos. Everything you said turned out to be a lie. How can I believe this is any different? Carlos's voice was filled with desperation. Check the side drawer of our bed. I felt a pang of curiosity mixed with frustration. Check the what? What's there? Just check it, please. It's important. Reluctantly, I walked over to the bedroom and opened the side drawer of the bed. Inside, I found a small stack of papers and a couple of envelopes. My heart raced as I picked them up and began to look through them. There were 2 plane tickets, along with our visas and passports. My hands shook as I unfolded the documents. There was also a set of papers with the heading of an apartment registration and a key. I looked at the items, my mind racing. Carlos, what is all this? Why are these here? Carlos's voice was steady but filled with sadness. I've been preparing everything for us. I bought the apartment for you, James. It was supposed to be our fresh start. I wanted to change for you, but I failed. I want you to keep the apartment because it was meant for you. It's a place where we can start over if you still want to. Something snapped in and all the pain I had been holding in got loose. I broke down. When will you come back? Will you ever come back? I could tell Carlos smiled. Of course. I will come back, baby. Where else could I go? I don't know when, but I promise I will be back. I want to be with you, and I want to make things right. Please believe me. I wiped away my tears, feeling a mix of sadness and hope. I'll keep the apartment. I'll wait for you. Please come back soon. Carlos's voice was warm and comforting. I promise, baby. I'll come back as soon as I can. Until then, take care of yourself, and remember, I love you. And with that, the phone hung up. Carlos was sentenced to 12 years in jail. It was all over the news. It saddened me, of course, but it also meant that I knew exactly how long I was supposed to wait. I, on the other hand, shifted to the new apartment and waited for him to start living our life together, exactly the way he wanted us to live. Conclusion. Carlos kept his promise. He came back. It wasn't easy. 12 years in jail changes a person in a way you can't understand. But I knew deep down he was the same Carlos who I fell in love with. The one who would do anything for me and I for him. It took us much effort, but together we slowly were able to overcome all the challenges that stood in the way. We still have a long way to go, but after everything we have been through, I'm sure with each other's support and the love we have in our hearts for each other, we will be able to overcome anything. For us. For our future together. The end. How long can you wait for the one you love? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force, and to stay wholesome.